What's up? It's your boy Kevin to turn on this motherfucking YouTube shit. Wow, what the fuck?
What's up? It's your boy Kevin to on YouTube shit. Hey man, say man, we are lit to team man, turn. Today to motherfucking day. Show hitting outside, big crip in the gang, show hitting outside shit, man. Free Palestine, free Congo, Russia, do your thing, and Texas stand the fuck up. Each day is a new day to be a better version of yourself. Now let's right breathe down, also right back. Now let's right tell you are also put yourself in a position you don't belong. Let's stay humble, let's go revolution on this movement. Keep your way first. Coming to the Black Hebrew Israelite as a real Jew. We out here. Alright. Boom. Today, motherfucking day. Show hitting outside, big crip in the gang, show hitting outside shit, man. Turn up, and the gang go. Hey man, say man, we out here, man. So this is, man, you know, we in a cycle, man. Black people, man, unfortunately, you know, be losing their lives, man. And a lot of it do be in a rap gang, but it's a lot of people, man, who just be getting hit, just to be getting hit. You know what I'm saying? They don't even have to be rappers. They don't have to be celebrities. People just be, getting taken out. So, you know, as us black people, man, we got to come together. And I know it's going to be a lot of drama because there's a lot of black people, man, who don't like black people. Who be trying to take niggas out just because. So, you know, at the end of the day, we got to protect ourselves. So, hey, we got little Durk, man. And, you know, it's like, we know how the manipulation of the system is and stuff. You know how they control us with that money. You know what I'm saying? How the white supremacy try to control us with that money. But we got little Durk, man. How did it come down to this? Where this nigga is facing murder for hire, bro? You know what I'm saying? The dark past, man. It's like it's so much shit that be happening in this world, man. And, you know. Sometimes when stuff happens, man, you got choices. And sometimes people make these crazy choices of where, you know, it get crazy. Free that nigga Durk, man. Let's get into it. All right, gang. So we got the Dark Psychology, little Durk, J Wisdom. Shout out to you, my boy. Let's get it, nigga.
Chicago has always produced some demons over the years.
How did it get like this?
The trenches always seem like a place impossible to get away from.
At least 45 people were shot, 4 of them killed, including the Chicago police officer since last night. And according to the Chicago Sun-Times, so far this month, 155 people have been shot in gun violence across the city.
But there was one man who looked to flip that script, to be different, to become a multi-millionaire from music.
Be different. I mean,
start a foundation for the youth. Lil Durk was potentially going to become someone who showed that jail or death wasn't the only option coming out of the ghetto of South Chicago. Unfortunately, that was only one side of Durk. In October 2024, Lil Durk was arrested in relation to organizing a murder for hire in an attempt at revenge for losing one of his own, and it put a highlight on who Durk really is. Although he's achieved a level of success most could only dream of, and can portray a certain image to the masses, he's never really left the streets.
I'm not worried by this life of comments.
For some reason, I just don't see the comments no more.
Some odd reason. I don't know. Might be the water.
Through police reports, interviews, song lyrics, social media, and speculation,
might be the water,
it becomes clearer that Durk is more multidimensional than one would think. But my goal isn't just to tell the story, it's to break down the mind behind it, giving the insight into what's going on inside, dissecting the brain, understanding what's behind it all, and is he truly evil for the things he's done?
When I got locked up for the drama and shit, like Durk was the main one supporting me and shit, helping me. So we got even closer when I was just in jail. Then I got out. So me and Durk, you know, we like.
Can you tell me where was your mind when you heard the news of your friend Vaughn passing away?
They know the exact that put up 10 bullets in King Vaughn and he died there by himself.
Damn.
Why nobody slid for that?
I was the one really in bro here, like, don't move on it. But bro, I'm gonna be that person and let you know, bro, like, this cycle we in as black men is a never ending cycle.
And then the loss of your brother on June 6, 2021. Wow. That must have been incredibly devastating.
These babies and these women, they depending on y'all. You understand? And you know what I mean? And on some real shit, we erase each other.
That's a fact. How did it get to this point, man?
Durk Banks was born October 19th, 1992. Life began in Inglewood, Chicago, and he and his siblings were raised by their mom, LaShonda. His dad, Dante Banks Sr., or Big Durk, was a fairly big figure in the neighborhood and moved a lot of weight. He did make a lot of money illegally, but he was jailed when Durk was only 7 months old in 1993. This resulted in a life sentence, one that he would serve over 26 years for. Before Durk could even form a core memory with him, he'd lost his dad to the system, taking away that core male figure needed in a child's life. In formative years, we all develop role models. When you have a solid father in your life, it's usually him, but if you don't, then you tend to look for one, whether that be a celebrity, an athlete, or maybe someone you know personally. But for Durk, the fact his dad was this big criminal and had status, Durk claimed he wanted to be just like him.
So what was it like looking up to your dad and watching your dad do his thing?
I ain't gonna lie, I want to be just like him. Yeah, all the cars, all the bitches, all the furs, all the clothes. I'm like, damn, I want to be just like him.
In other interviews, you said that your dad was caught with like $8 million, 6 bricks.
Yeah. That's why I want to be just like him. Said 8 million, shit.
So not only was Durk's father not around to discipline him, but his criminality became his inspiration. The way LaShonda described Durk's early life, he was clearly a bit unstable and ended up being suspended from school multiple times, showing classic signs of what's called conduct disorder, which put simply is when someone's acting like a little shit, lying, being aggressive and violent, breaking rules, and robbing chicken shops at gunpoint, which Durk did before even becoming a teen. Perhaps he was acting out due to his dad's absence, or because he didn't have a role model to teach him good behavior. Either way, his dad's former career and then prominent absence allowed Durk to be easily influenced by peers and his ghetto, violent, treacherous environment. From the early 90s to the 2000s, Inglewood had remained one of the most violent neighborhoods in Chicago. This image shows homicide rates by a police district over 2 decades. The areas in dark green are the safest, the ones in dark pink are the most dangerous. And despite there being some change around the map, Inglewood remained one of the more dangerous neighborhoods, with the homicide rate sitting at around 60 to 70 per 100,000 residents. If Durk hadn't seen the violence at a young age, which no doubt in my mind he would have, then he definitely would have heard about it happening right around the corner. And what ends up happening in violent areas where death is common is a desensitization to violence. The best way for me to explain the desensitization to violence is visualizing the difference between residents of the favelas of Brazil and the posh, wealthy residents in London, those who live in areas like Mayfair or Kensington. In the favelas, it's not uncommon for residents to hear gunfire regularly, witness armed police or gang shootouts, and see dead bodies or know people that were killed. When Britt Ashley Kane went over there, he described it as Call of Duty in real life, and heard gunshots his first night there.
That makes it Call of Duty in real life.
In the UK, they play Call of Duty. Out here in the favelas in Brazil, they do this shit for real.
In Brazil?
Hey, what?
Damn, nigga.
Hi, I'm AI.
They do this shit for real.
Hood.
Hey, what the fuck is going on? There's gunshots going off then.
If someone gets murdered over there, it's brushed off as seen as just another day. However, in the posh London areas, hearing gunshots is essentially non-existent. There's mainly stabbings here, but even then, it's typically in the more ghetto areas. There's no frequent exposure to murder or armed conflict. And for these wealthier people, crime, even a mugging, becomes a huge psychological event because it's outside their norm. It's something they remember and probably get panicked or emotional about it. So linking this back to Durk, being from Inglewood is much closer to being from the favelas where crime and violence is such a norm that there's a limited emotional response to the wicked things going on in the streets. They eventually moved to his grandma's house, a place where Durk experiences the struggles of being broke and hungry. 10 people in a small house, Durk sleeping on the floor, and rice and toast for meals.
Just came from nothing, you know what I'm saying? Came from one house, like 10 people. Nah, the worst memories of the most not eating. That's the worst you can go. You really should have enough rice and toast, other shit like that. Stop not eating at night.
That's crazy because we didn't eat that much rice
struggle of being
as
undereducated,
a kid.
the desensitization from the environment, and the bad examples of a father were the perfect recipe for Durk to take on a life in the streets. He would become gang affiliated, but with that came loss and trauma. One of his first experiences of this was when he lost a friend named Terrence Hollins, more known there as Lil Mo. Terrence was shot and killed in 2009 when he was just 17, with Durk being a couple years younger. They were part of the same set, Lamron, and Durk would go on to make one of his earliest pieces of music, called R.I.P. Mo. Later that year, Durk would get arrested for stealing a woman's vehicle. There didn't seem to be much legal repercussion, but it marked the start of Durk starting to make crime more of a normality. Aged 17 at the time, he'd be finishing education and turning fully to the streets. The following month, he was arrested again for trespassing in a laundromat, despite being told to leave. It seemed at this point things weren't too hot, as he was more of a delinquent than a violent person. In the early 2010s, he'd take music more seriously, dropping more songs and getting consistent. According to LaShonda, the music video to the song Lamron Wasted, which he filmed in her house, got numbers on YouTube, giving him that dopamine spike, causing him to become even more focused on being a big rapper. As time went on, it was cool to see how Durk experimented with different sounds. He did drill here and there, but his music wasn't repetitive, and often included different styles of rap. It seemed like he actually had a passion for the craft, and he wasn't just using it to glorify violence. But in July 2011, a friend of Durk's, who went by Taysky, was shot and killed. Just like with Lil Mo, Durk would again make a title tribute to Taysky in his mixtape, a song called Taysky Crazy, where he mentions the pain of losing a brother. And in a repeated cycle of lose a friend, commit a crime, in October that year, Durk would be arrested again for aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. Essentially, he was found with a loaded handgun on him and tried to run from the feds. But in a positive turn, in April 2012, after putting out more good music, Durk alongside one of his members, Lil Reese, would get signed to major record label Def Jam Records. His music run would be received as okay until May 2013, when he dropped This Ain't What You Want, a song that would later become the Chicago classic. He was boosting up the ranks musically, and his future had some promise. But he'd get arrested again for another gun charge the following month after being caught with a stolen gun. Luckily for him, his friend would later claim it was theirs, and he was free to go 2 weeks later. When you get the context of other gang members of Chicago and how many of them faced death or lengthy jail time, it seemed like Durk had all the good luck on his side. Success with music, escaping prison, respected by his gang. Life was truly on the up for him. In fact, if advised properly, it would have been smart for him to follow the footsteps of his good friend Chief Keef, another Chicago rapper who made viral music, signed a big money deal, then decided it was time to move out of the hood to the suburbs of LA, calling Chicago a sickness.
So we left Chicago. What did we leave behind? The sickness. Sickness.
Away from bad stuff.
However, Durk remained in his hood, perhaps to keep up a gangster image to thrive in the genre, perhaps out of loyalty, or perhaps he was so desensitized he didn't see the danger. But as we'd come to find out, despite being blessed with luck and given plenty of opportunities, Durk was terrible at making the right decisions. Durk may have not been big enough at this time, but God for sure showed him the dark side of the Chicago streets to try and sway his mind for when he did make enough. In November 2013, Durk's close friend Pluto would be killed after apparently being accidentally shot in the car by someone he was riding with.
Apply to jobs that actually...
Durk would be hurt by this, years later, saying if Pluto wasn't hanging with strangers, he'd still be alive. But the next loss would hurt way more. In May 2014, Durk signed his cousin Nunu to his new rap label, but 3 days after signing, Newski would be waiting in a car before being shot and killed. The saddest part was Durk arriving moments later to see his cousin lifeless in the car, with Durk even being photographed and mocked for his reaction. This was another addition to the long list of lives Durk was losing to the streets, whilst his brain was trying to combat this PTSD by hiding the pain and continuing with his life. The crash-out cycle would continue, and Durk would commit a third unlawful use of a weapon charge in November 2014. Police found a 22-year-old Durk in the kitchen with 2 loaded handguns, which he claimed was for protection, and then arrested him. Again, this would be an in-and-out thing, but it showed Durk was far away from living a life that was away from trouble. By age 22, Durk had already lost multiple close friends and family members, likely more than just the ones I've mentioned. The repeated exposure to sudden violent death, especially involving loved ones, leads to what psychologists call cumulative trauma. Each violent death doesn't just hurt on its own, it piles onto the last, slowly dismantling a person's ability to cope. Durk's brain, unable to process one trauma before the next occurs, builds a wall of emotional suppression to survive, making him seem more and more heartless after each loss. He became someone who rarely expresses visible grief publicly, but instead chooses to give people an insight through his music, which is what he'd seemingly focused on for a while. A couple years went by, and he slowly adapted to a rapper lifestyle, moving to Atlanta to focus fully on the music. But Chicago produced another gang member that reeled Durk back into the life he'd never end up leaving.
Boy, King Von.
King Von is someone I already made a psychological analysis for, and within that, I discussed how he came into the streets, evolving into someone capable of extreme violence and zero hesitation to murder. Although Durk was gang-affiliated and had gun charges, his CV compared to Von's was nothing alike. Real name Davon Bennett, Von was a real demon, potentially a serial killer that never got caught. A psychopath whose early life had not only desensitized him to murder, but gave him a thirst for revenge, wanting desperately to kill in an attempt to get back for the brothers he'd lost. In 2017, Von had come out of jail after beating a murder charge, the murder of Malcolm Stuckey in 2014. He'd awaited trial for 3 years, but with no corroborating witnesses to testify, he got away with it. Durk and Von actually went way back. Von stated that they grew up in the same area, neighboring hoods, meeting each other around 6th or 7th grade, Durk being 2 years older.
How'd you guys meet? Growing up, same area, hoods, you know how that go.
Do you remember the first time you met him?
Around like 6th grade or something, 7th grade.
But didn't go to the same school?
Nah, I'm younger.
I see.
When he did come out, Durk would start to bring him along for shows and getting him more involved with PR-related stuff. With Durk knowing what he knew about Von's violent past, he encouraged him to get on the mic himself and start telling his stories, knowing the fans love hearing that gritty violence. Quickly, Durk signed him to OTF and took him under his wing. But when you know who King Von actually is, or in better words, what he's allegedly done, it's clear that he could be anything but a good influence for Durk, at least legally. But let's not act like Von came out of nowhere to pull Durk down. Durk specifically chose to uplift Von during and after jail and to bring him closer, seeming to almost be attracted or fascinated by his violent nature. Maybe he saw it all as a business move to raise his own profile as a street rapper, or to increase viewership for OTF, as Von would go on to pull in big numbers as his music started going viral, like Crazy Story and Took Her to the O. Maybe it was purely out of love and they had a bond just as strong behind the scenes. Regardless, this partnership would be the beginning of the end for Durk. February 5th, 2019, a shooting happened in downtown Atlanta, and a time later, both Durk and Von would be charged with possession and criminal intent to murder, among other charges, after allegedly shooting a man. But after some legal back and forth, Durk and his lucky charm secured bond in June 2019 and was a free man again, with Von also getting bond soon after. Over the next year, Durk was musically improving, dropping the album Just Cause Y'all Waited 2 in June 2020, my personal favourite from Durk, which would be his first to land in the top 2 of the Billboard 200. Then, to display the level he was currently reaching, he would collaborate with one of the biggest rappers of all time, Drake, dropping their song Laugh Now Cry Later in August, which would instantly rack up millions of views, and further put Durk on the map. Durk was truly rising to be not only one of the best rappers from Chicago, but one of the best rappers in the game, period. He'd been blessed legally to escape long-term imprisonment, and been blessed to keep his life despite many from Chicago losing theirs to gang violence, and blessed financially, as his net worth in 2020 was in the millions of dollars. Not a bad upgrade from rice and toast. He was truly at the pinnacle. But violence wasn't something he stayed disconnected from. There was another big rapper from Chicago that Durk and Von had beef with, named FBG Duck, real name Carlton Weekly. Now, he wasn't innocent by any means, and repeatedly made fun of Durk and Von's dead friends and family, but eventually there would be retaliation for the dissing, and in the same month Durk would drop the song with Drake. FBG Duck would be hunted and killed in broad daylight outside a shopping mall, after some men hopped out of a car and riddled him with bullets. Based on what the feds later revealed, 6 O-Block members got the drop on Durk, got in their cars, and took him out. Although neither Durk or Von were one of those 6 men, there was allegedly a $100,000 bounty on Durk's head, and the 2 rappers would have been the likely suspects in that circle that would be able to fund that with their music money. Regardless of if he had involvement or not, Durk would later mock Durk's death, saying she asked me how high I get. I said, as high as Durk. He also did something else quite wicked, as later he'd collab with country star Morgan Wallen, linking up and making music. But following their link-ups, Wallen would comment duck emojis under a Durk IG post. This would cause people to laugh at Wallen, calling him OTF Morgan and Morgan from the O, and some people even got angry at him, believing he was also mocking FBG Duck's murder. Wallen would later come out saying he and Durk would always talk about duck hunting, and he had no clue it could mean anything else. A bit funny, I guess, but this was Durk trying to death of FBG Duck in a disturbing way.
That nigga always talking about
An
duck
innocent man on the
hunting.
firing line. And it's things like this that make it hard to ever suggest he has remorse or empathy. But whether karma for Durk for the mockery, or karma for Von for,
These white people don't know what the fuck they
everything.
talking about.
3 months after Durk's
How do
murder,
they know what we
on
talking about?
November
But
6,
you know what I'm
2020,
saying, bro? Come
Von
on,
would
bro.
sucker punch
You ain't
rapper
ready for that
Quando
life,
Rondo
nigga.
outside the club, leading to Quando's friend Lil Tim jumping out the car, shooting and killing Von.
26-year-old Devon Bennett, also known as rapper King Von, shot and killed after a deadly fight erupted in front of Monaco Hookah Lounge.
It goes without saying that this would have no doubt deeply hurt Durk. He'd lost friends before, but Von seemed closer than that. Durk had gotten closer than ever to him, and basically given him a career purely out of love. But that bond was permanently ended that night. Durk would put out an IG post saying his twin was gone, and he loves him, but the internet wouldn't let Durk deal with things in his own time. Due to the nature of being gang-affiliated, having violent lyrics, referencing get-backs and all that, there was an expectation for Durk to quickly retaliate, coining the phrase, slide for Von, which became a popular way to almost mock the situation.
They know the exact that put 10 bullets in King Von and he died there by himself. Why nobody slid for that?
First of
Go
all,
slide for that, man. Y'all know what y'all saying? Why this not shooting at that King Von? Yo, Durk, go slide for me.
So I don't know no politics.
Why is this not sliding on? How you know?
If it was the other way
Nigga, why
around,
you didn't free the
Von
niggas
would
you got
have most
locked
definitely
up?
done something for Durk,
Alright then.
so I understand where the pressure was coming from. But for a while, Durk seemingly ignored it, going on a great run musically, and getting more music on the charts. The loss would have definitely affected him privately, but he decided to master pain and voice his emotions through music. But in my opinion, it was the next death that would really break him, and the relatively close proximity of losing two people extremely close to him would break his spirit and change Durk forever.
Nigga, Durk that probably lost everybody.
What do you say? Would break his spirit and change Durk forever. Dante Banks Jr. was Durk's older brother, 3 years older. He'd be in the streets like Durk and was known as D-Thang. The two of them were always very close and had a tight bond. Although Durk's dad wasn't around, he still had D-Thang around for advice, being someone he could always trust 100%. Also, from a street's perspective, his name also held weight, as he was rumoured to have put hits on people himself, and it's also known that he got rich on his own without Durk's help. He and Durk were always on the same page and always had each other. Even when in different cities, their bond was inseparable. Following Von's death, Durk seemingly focused on music, and on June 4th, he'd drop a collab album with Lil Baby, Voice of the Heroes. However, 2 days later, it would get reported that D-Thang was shot in the head outside a strip club and was pronounced dead at the scene. Durk would post his brother, but again, a simple post could never express the real pain Durk was hiding behind the screen. After this, the culmination of losing both Von and D-Thang would have brought Durk to his breaking point, and in my opinion, unless he completely distanced himself from the streets and relocated to a place far away to go heal in private, things would inevitably go downhill from here. Because after Von's death and D-Thang's murder, Durk seemed to lose his internal compass. These weren't just friends, they were family, business partners, and emotional pillars. In forensic psychology, this sets the stage for survivor's guilt, especially in men who feel that they failed to protect their tribe. This kind of guilt can push a person into risky behavior, substance abuse, or obsessive vengeance, all of which seem present in Durk's arc. He couldn't let them go unavenged, and he repeatedly expresses this in his following music. 4 months after D-Thang's death, in October 2021, Durk would drop the song Pissed Me Off, and a couple bars in there showed his state of mind, saying, "I lost bro, I can't be happy till we creep up on the score," essentially referring to getting back for Von, and only then will he be happy. And then saying, "Grab a gun if you ain't with it, put up money for a gun, put up money for a hot car, put up money for a bond," essentially telling his members that even if they're not going to shoot, then to at least contribute money for a gun or for a car to use in pursuit of getting revenge. Although he'd always rapped about the streets, it seemed he was releasing a lot of pent-up aggression in his new music, caring less about being pop and brand friendly, and caring only for revenge. Then he dropped the song Aha in February 2022. His first line says, "Don't respond to shit with Von." I'm like, "Okay, you tripping, go get your gun." Now, my assumption is that this was a reference to what fellow rapper NLE Chopper was talking about in an interview.
If he wanted you out of there, he'll go do it himself on feet by himself. But he chose one night, you know what I'm saying, to think she was going to be fair and got blowed down. But I never feel the situation was wrong because at the end of the day, bro was protecting his brand. Bro was protecting what was his.
Yeah, that's right.
And bro was just doing what he felt was right. So it's never no wrong. I just feel like he's not here to protect his name. With Von and all that, all that shit was happening, bro. I was the one really in bro ear, like, I'm gonna be that person to let you know, bro, like, this cycle we in as black men is a never-ending cycle.
He states that it was just unfortunate that Lil Tim was there to protect his boy whose life was potentially in danger, but he advised Durk not to seek retaliation. Von's death was unnecessary and not really gang-related, So NLE was essentially saying that if Durk listens to everyone telling him to slide and he gets revenge, it's going to repeat the cycle of black men killing each other and just be creating more enemies. Not only that, but Durk at this stage is at the pinnacle of his career, and being involved with more violence when you have 6 kids and a woman depending on you shouldn't have been his priority. But as stated in that line, he thinks anyone telling him to let it go is tripping, and he isn't willing to listen. He then says, "My brother D-Thang just got killed and I've been slow since, but we got back on their ass, I bet they know this." This small mention still illustrates how much losing his blood brother really affected him, saying he's been moving slow, and possibly relapsing with drugs or getting him into therapy. In 2020, he claimed he'd been recovering from an addiction to perks and lean with the help of his girl India.
They take a lot of perks, and I sip like a lot of lean. You know, we don't look at weed like I'm a junkie, but you look at like pills and shit like that, and I was like heavy on it. You know what I'm saying? Even if it was off camera, like, and then she'll never judge me. She'll just be like, you gotta, you know what I'm saying, you gotta weave off them, you gotta chill, you gotta fall back and find you.
They got too much fentanyl on them bitches
you
now.
a junkie, you. So that's why I respect it. Like, okay, bet.
And in 2023, he said he got in a therapist and also spoke about how he's never been able to outpour his feelings as he doesn't trust anyone with those emotions. And in 2024, he'd speak about going to rehab for his lean and Xanax addiction.
Before rehab, before you went in, what was your mental state like? What was your...
Moving fast, letting the drugs take over me.
Drugs?
Yeah, just like the codeine and everything.
Is that what it was? Was codeine?
Yeah, Xanax.
So drug use has always been something prominent in dealing with his pain. And during this period after D-Thang's loss, I guess Durk's implying it's hard to bottle up these emotions and just keep it stepping like it's another day, resulting in him moving slow. But in the next line, he does claim that they got back for D-Thang. Now, this is all allegations in terms of Durk's involvement, but in January 2022, Stephon Mack, part of the gang involved in killing D-Thang, was gunned down and killed by 2 complete clowns who left tons of evidence behind and would later be convicted of murder. But there's also some damning evidence that caused the feds to suggest that Durk had an involvement in the killing, and that it was potentially a murder for hire. Firstly, the day after the murder, Durk would post on his IG story saying, "For D-Thang, aha," causing many to speculate that this was the get back for his brother. Then much later, it was found out that the 2 killers had messaged each other 2 weeks after the murder and discussed that Durk was supposed to be paying them for the drill. However, in mid-2025, it was determined that Durk won't be charged for the Stephon Mack murder. But either way, as insinuated by his lyric, he was happy with the revenge that was served for D-Thang. But in his mind, things weren't finished until there'd been revenge for Von too. Revenge for Von too. Before going into the most destructive and final event of Durk's career so far, I want to put a spotlight on a side of Durk's life away from the violence, and more on the familial, loving side of Durk. Although Durk is visibly someone with a dark and violent side to him, he's always seemed to value having a solid woman to ground him. His first known relationship was with Nicole Cavone.
They said she turned to a bad bitch.
They got together in 2008.
They said that bitch right there turned to a bad bitch while that nigga was gone.
First child, a son named Angelo. Less than 2 years after that, Nikki would give birth to their daughter Bella. So by 21, Durk already had 2 kids and was just starting to blow with music after dropping This Ain't What You Want. But perhaps battling fatherhood, getting arrested frequently, losing multiple close friends, and trying to blow with music had put too much of a strain on Durk. And shortly after Bella's birth, Durk and Nikki separated. But that wouldn't slow Durk down, not musically, not criminally, and not reproductively, as in 2013, he had his 3rd child, Zayden, then Demir in 2014, and Skylar also in 2014. But then in 2017, Durk would meet someone that, in his words, would change him for the better.
But it was like when I was at my lowest point, like when I would tell you I was fucked up, like that's when I met her.
Durk and India Royale's relationship became something he'd always talk about positively, and she was seemingly someone he definitely wanted a future with. In 2018, they welcomed his 6th and her 2nd child, Willow. Not only was Durk a great father to his kids, but he had accepted India's other child, the other Skylar, with the nickname Big Sky, as his own. To me, this showed that there's no way Durk is empty inside. He's not so traumatized that he's void of all emotion. Despite perhaps a lack of empathy, he still has some loving, positive sides to him. He'd even write songs for her, like India and India Part 2, where he'd say, "Nobody understands why we love each other the way we do, but it ain't for them to understand. We're not out here trying to be relationship goals. This real. We don't care about none of that internet stuff." Then in a live Chicago concert on December 18th, 2021, Durk brought India on stage and asked her to marry him.
And they be on some BS anyway. What they talking about?
This was Durk at the peak of his love, but somehow, despite it all, he still lost the one person he thought would stay. In September 2022, India posted, "I'm a free agent" on Twitter and unfollowed Durk on Instagram. For whatever reason, the relationship had evidently ended. However, this didn't stop Durk trying to publicly win her back. At first, it seemed romantic, but over time, it began to look obsessive. On Valentine's Day 2023, Durk posted on his IG story saying, "Happy Valentine's Day to the wonderful woman that made me a man. I love you, India Royale." To which India would reply, "People really do not respect boundaries at all. I try my best to be respectful and not put on a show, but people don't respect my choices.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with these hoes,
Despite
nigga?
her saying let it go,
Goofy
he would
assholes.
continue by posting a lengthy IG story airing out more things that could have been kept private. And India would, at least publicly, ignore this. In a XXL interview, they would ask Durk if they were together or broken up, but Durk would say that they will always be together. This shows Durk has some sort of emotional instability and struggles to manage his emotions, perhaps because after so much loss in the streets, the thought of losing her too
Can't
was
trust the
unbearable.
bitch, man. They'll
Durk
crash your
clearly has the
ass
capacity to
out,
love.
nigga.
He openly praised India, proposed publicly, raised her
Never
child
trust
as
the
his
bitch,
own,
man. They'll
and
crash
credits
your
her for
ass
helping
out,
him
nigga.
overcome
Simple.
drug addiction. But when
They'll
India
dip
left,
when it's time to
Durk
go.
couldn't let go. This kind of behavior suggests obsessive relational intrusion, a concept where someone can't accept a relationship termination, then knowingly and repeatedly invading the other person's privacy boundaries. I'm not calling him a Joe Goldberg type of stalker, but giving India a bit of space might have been the move. The concept is often rooted in abandonment trauma, and for Durk, this fits perfectly. He lost his father to prison, he lost many of his friends to the streets, he lost his blood brother to a headshot, and then he lost his lover. These losses are common causes for abandonment trauma, which is often exemplified by trust issues, clinginess, and anxiety, amongst other things. Psychologists would likely label Durk as having anxious, preoccupied attachment, where deep insecurity leads to clinginess, emotional outbursts, and difficulty accepting emotional boundaries. Durk was hurting, but his breakup would end up being the least of his concerns, because prior to this, Durk had potentially committed a terrible act, a calculated act of violence, which may have caused his demise. Welcome.
Hey, this video good as hell, nigga.
There's no one I agree with more when it comes to Durk's situation than Wallow267. When Durk appeared on the podcast $1 Million Worth of Game, hosted by Gilly and Wallow, he would give details about his life, including his success, relationship, and members lost, like King Von. But then Wallow would go on to rant to Durk about how essentially being in the position he's in, he needs to leave the street violence alone and be grateful and protective of what he's built to protect his family.
Because we gotta get it right so we can take care of these babies. These babies and these women, they depending on y'all. You understand? And you know what I mean? And on some real shit, we erasing each other.
But the most important life lesson
true,
Wallow
nigga.
delivered
We
to
killing
Durk
each other like
was
damn
about forgiving
flies,
his
nigga.
brother's killer.
I forgave my brother's killer. And I'm saying it to say this. He shot my brother, he ran to the house. He died of natty hard when she opened the door. So I'm telling you this some real shit, man. If I ain't let that shit go, I won't be right here today. I won't be here for my niece and my nephews, man. Gil won't be doing this. Y'all won't know me. I won't be able to get y'all this game. But I had to leave. I had to let that shit go. When I let that shit go, I started to grow. Now I'm out here taking care of his daughter, paying for her to go to school, taking care of my nephew, taking care of my mom and my grandmama. Talk to him. Sure. Because I forgave my brother killer, but you know, I understand. I understand what y'all going through.
And this might be the most infuriating moment of this story, because Wallow in that moment was telling Durk exactly what he needed to hear. Wallow knew that Durk was grieving hard for Von. That was his brother, and his killers were still out there. But he encouraged him not to strive to get revenge. With Durk essentially being raised in a gang, plus all the slide for Von comments, it was hard for him to lose that idea of getting back in blood. But Wallow was literally telling him that the only reason he's able to be there for his family and be there to help others is because he didn't end up in jail trying to pursue revenge on his brother's killer. Durk visibly seemed to lack any emotional reaction to the news and story, being in too deep at this point.
He was already out, man.
Did get back to plotting. His guys got the drop on the man he gave misplaced responsibility to for the death of Von. Imagine a man comes up to you and randomly punches you in the face and starts beating you on the ground.
Crazy.
Then your friend defends you,
But the
shoots your
thing
attacker,
is,
killing
they
him
already
legally
knew.
in self-defense, by
They
the way.
already knew it was gonna
Then
happen.
later, your
They
attacker's
was
friends
ready
put
for
a
the
target
shit.
on your head,
Little
and
Tim
now
and them.
your life is in danger
Nigga,
for
before that,
seemingly no
nigga, they
reason.
was ready.
Well, that was Quando Rondo's
The nigga
POV.
said, nigga, you
And
run
in
up on
August
my ass, nigga,
2022,
you done.
only 5 months after that podcast
King Von
episode
ran up
dropped,
on the nigga.
Durk would get the drop on Quando. Here's the story we have. On August 18th, OTF, which is Durk's label /
It
team,
was like they
were
wasn't
able to
ready.
get
Like,
Quando's location
what's
from an
happening?
insider,
They
currently
already
only
knew what the
named as
fuck was going
co-conspirator
down,
4.
nigga. I'm trying to
Co-conspirator
see that
3,
trip.
who's an OTF associate, used an American Express card linked to OTF and Durk, and booked one-way flights from Chicago to San Diego for 5 OTF members. But seemingly, either sent late or just an act of ignorance from his crew, Durk had messaged, "Don't book no flights under no names involved with me," in an apparent attempt to distance himself from the entailing events. Durk and OTF Vonnie flew private to LA, but Vonnie left a paper trail, booking ski masks, hotels, and rental cards on Durk's credit card. This might be another factor that potentially puts Durk away for a long time, as it strongly ties his involvement into what would happen the next day. On August 19th, Quando and his cousin Lil Pab would leave their hotel in a Cadillac Escalade, getting driven around the West Hollywood / Beverly Grove area of LA to run some errands. They stopped at a local weed shop, then a clothing store, all the while unbeknownst to them. 2 cars, one being driven by Vonnie and the other being filled by OTF shooters, were watching their every move and waiting for an opportunity. Then when they stopped at a gas station, they saw an opportunity and fired 18 rounds at the car. Lil Pab, who was outside the Cadillac at the time, was hit and would later be pronounced dead. Quando managed to pull his body back into the car and drive away, but a viral video would circulate showing Quando looking at his cousin's wounded body before letting out a scream in distress.
I think they did that on purpose to make that nigga Quando Rondo suffer, nigga. They want him to feel the suffer. They could took his ass out easy.
The shooters fled and boarded flights home, once more on an OTF-linked card. Now, it was fairly incriminating already with the paper trail using an OTF card and a pre-warning text message sent from Durk. But in December 2022, a song would be released by Babyface Ray featuring Lil Durk. And this song has some questionable bars that to many seem to be referencing the situation 4 months prior. A bar that stuck out to me was, "It's f***ed up, I'd rather get revenge instead of millions." It's as though he's consciously aware that by pursuing revenge for his fallen brothers like D-Thang and Von, he's risking his financial position by getting incriminated and going to jail, and that by allegedly taking out Lil Pab, he's putting himself in a position where his career could be over. Another line everyone would then make noise about came at the end of the song. "Got location, go. Green light, go. Look on the news, see your son screaming no." Now, with retrospect and the information from the case, it would seem like Durk is bragging about the events that entailed and rapped a summarized pocket-sized version. OTF got location from co-conspirator 4. Then the green light was given from Durk, telling him to go get Quando, but not to link him to the flights and items bought. Then, look on the news, see your son screaming no, is obviously a reference to the clip showing footage of Quando screaming no after seeing Pab. If this song was written after the incident, it would surely be an evident display of bragging about the murder. However, when this song got brought up in the indictment, Durk's lawyers claimed the song was recorded before the events, showing a screenshot of a file being created January 2022, 8 months before the event. This is backed up by Durk's engineer, saying they indeed recorded this song in January 2022. However, that's if you take the engineer's word and a mere screenshot to represent the truth. However, that's if you take the engineer's word and a mere screenshot to represent the truth. Durk had also jumped on a podcast with DJ Academics in May the following year, where he would cryptically confirm that revenge for Von had been achieved.
What are you talking about? By the slide for Von.
You know the feds watch the academic shit. It's like shit. That's number one. I bet that's the first person they go to. It's on a Vlad TV or Academics. The feds gonna be watching this shit off the back. Crip, nigga.
Might be the order.
Expeditiously. Then next is Apple 22, nigga. Crip.
They kind of chilled out a little bit. I wonder why.
He isn't claiming personal responsibility, but he's insinuating the streets know that the death of Lil Pab had leveled things out, and he feels satisfied that the murder has served justice. It goes without saying that Durk was glad that the murder happened, and if it failed and Quando and Pab both survived, he'd still be getting his guys out looking for someone to kill associated with Von's death. And during this interview, Durk visibly didn't see himself, and I think there was a multitude of things that could have been going on here, but mainly exhaustion and survivor's guilt. To him, revenge was supposed to serve as an emotional restoration. Getting revenge for Von and D-Thang was supposed to make him feel good again, and the violence that he'd allegedly orchestrated was an attempt to undo that pain and trauma. But once vengeance was completed, Durk appears psychologically exhausted. His presence in interviews shows disorientation and emotional fatigue, and his identity was so deeply tied to that once the mission was complete,
Yeah, Durk
there
been
was
through
nothing
a
left
lot of
inside
shit, man.
but an
Durk
inner
going
void.
through that
And to
shit,
give
man.
listeners an insight into his mind, Durk dropped the album Almost Healed in May 2023. The first skit on the album, Therapy Session, starts with Alicia Keys asking Durk where his mind was when he heard about Von, followed by D-Thang, and then it shows a visual depiction of Durk losing his mind.
Can you tell me where was your mind when you heard the news of your friend Vaughn passing away on November 6, 2020? And then the loss of your brother on June 6, 2021. Wow. That must have been incredibly devastating.
Then there's a few lines in the second song, Petticoat, that give more insight. Durk says, I send money for jails, I send money for funerals, even though they're going hell for all the guys they killed. This is Durk openly accepting that the murders he and his team have been involved in will lead to eternal punishment in the afterlife as justice, but he still helps them and their family because this is just the life they live. He then says, morning time I get on my knees, I pray to Allah, forgive me for the shit I did. Let me get closer to my kids. Can you protect all my friends? He's claiming he's in a stage of repentance and trying to change his life around, which to me doesn't imply remorse or guilt, but as though he wants to now walk on a better path and give up the violence, as there's nothing left to fight for. Even the recurring line in the song, they scared to come outside, is a nod to the song Outside by the late Mo 3 and OG Bobby Billions, a song that preaches about wanting repentance from God for the bloodshed in the streets. And perhaps Durk is alluding to wanting the same by quoting the song. But then, the next song was either a full display of a change of heart, or a manipulation set out to fool the world. His song, All My Life with J. Cole, was a pop-esque viral anthem, all happy and giddy vibes of children singing in the background of the chorus and appearing in the music video, with Durk rapping lyrics telling that he sat down with the mayor of Chicago to help out the impoverished kids, to change the image, showing that he's trying to take things in a more positive direction, and that he's advising people to stop taking drugs, referring to himself as he'd been fighting drug addiction and even gone to rehab, showing he struggles to really cope with what's happened, potentially not just with who he's lost, but with what he's been involved in himself. The song was well received and even went on to win a Grammy in 2024, and perhaps Durk was on his way to cleaning up his image, but in that same year, it would all come crashing down. In 2024, Durk had a bit of radio silence due to attending rehab for his codeine and Xanax addiction, claiming he wanted to be a better man, a better father, and a better leader, and that his main goal is peace.
And what was that? What did you want?
I wanted better. I was saying I wanted to be a better man, a better father, a better leader. But more action. So I gotta make sure that self is good before anybody else. See, my main goal is peace. You know what I'm saying? Being with the family and staying out of bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And getting 100% on my ding.
In September, it was even revealed that Durk claimed his record had been cleaned, showing he really was turning a new page. Then, on October 20th, Durk would host his birthday event in a packed stadium, and at one point, he put on the big screen many of the guys that had lost their lives in the war in Chicago from both sides. So not only did it include Durk's closest like Von and D-Thang, but also supposed ops like FBG Cash and FBG Durk, both people he previously made disses about after they died. But a few days later, those OTF members would be arrested in connection to Lil Pup's murder. Durk, who was in Miami, had heard the news, and he'd booked 3 flights that were all departing on the same day. But before he could depart, he was picked up by feds for orchestrating the murder of Lil Pup.
Chicago rapper Lil Durk is being held without bond. He was arrested in a murder for hire plot carried out 2 years ago.
Smart.
At the time of recording,
they would have to catch my
Durk's trial
ass,
was yet to
nigga. Hell
start,
no, I'm not going
and he's
in
not currently
either,
guilty of the major
nigga.
crimes spoken about in this video.
Fuck no,
If
baby.
I had to make a prediction,
Catch my
unless
ass
someone
if you
completely
can,
flips on
nigga.
Durk,
I'm
and I think he'll
gone.
actually walk away a free man.
I go somewhere
He's
else.
always had his lucky charms, and the evidence doesn't prove he orchestrated it beyond reasonable doubt. He may get gun trafficking charges, but not the full fat murder for hire. But guilty or not, I think there's so much we've covered that the mind of Durk Banks still deserves to go under the scope and get analysed. From his childhood, we covered that early environmental conditioning and role model dysfunction after his dad left. The interesting thing is that at this stage of his life, things could have gone multiple ways. I remember watching one of the most underrated shows in my opinion, called Defending Jacob, and the character Andy was a child when his dad went to prison for murder, and that fueled him to ensure his life was nothing like his. and to follow a good path in being a district attorney or something like that. He hated his father for the monster he supposedly was. But then you have people like Woody Harrelson, whose father was an actual hitman and killed a judge. Woody reportedly never wanted to be anything like his father, but he didn't hate him. He visited him in jail and even tried to get him out. So there's so many directions one can go after their criminal father gets imprisoned, and perhaps due to the environment or the respect Big Durk had gained and the money he'd made, Durk chose to be inspired. He internalized deviance as a trait of masculinity in the hood. Focusing on school made you a nerd. Trespassing and stealing cars made you cool. And as mentioned, led to his childhood conduct disorder. And studies show that there's a solid connection between conduct disorder and antisocial personality traits, or what the internet likes to call psychopaths and sociopaths. To me, Von was a much more classic example of a psychopath, someone who ticked most of the boxes and had zero real empathy. Durk to me is nothing like Von. If we're talking about the psychosocial scale, then he definitely leans more towards being a sociopath. He became a gangster because his environment and situation made him one. Even though in my opinion and my analysis he doesn't even qualify for this. He does have a few ASPD traits though, such as repeated unlawful behavior, with the multiple gun charges and gang-related arrests, deceitfulness, a lack of remorse evident by mocking the deaf in his lyrics, aggressiveness and impulsivity, irresponsibility such as his drug use whilst being a parent, and if we are to believe the allegations made against him, then the strategic planning of murder plots on more than one occasion would for sure show that he has strong tendencies. It really comes down to what's allegations and what's confirmed, but in my opinion, he is on the edge. In later years, Durk would show deep signs of internal conflict, praying to Allah for forgiveness, releasing more of those peace-seeking tracks like All My Life and Pellicoat, hosting that event memorializing both friends and enemies, attending therapy, entering rehab, and seeking clarity. Yet these actions are in direct opposition to his alleged involvement in the murder for hire, as well as his more violent lyrics. This creates a state known as cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort of holding two contradictory values. In one breath he wants to be a better man, but in another he's one that seeks violence as revenge. When someone feels torn between different beliefs for a long time, it can hurt them mentally. This gets worse when they experience traumatic events, like feeling like they must avenge one's death. This creates what experts call moral injury, the deep emotional pain that comes from doing something that goes against what you believe is right. This is often seen in soldiers that have to kill, but it also applies to former gang members. If Durk was out right now, would he still be pushing the peace, or would he be rapping more about the violence and bragging? Durk's turn to religion, therapy, and sobriety indicates a man desperate for redemption, but likely haunted by irreversible choices. Durk is not a one-dimensional gangster or sociopath. He's a complex trauma survivor, shaped by abandonment, normalized violence, and systemic loss. He exhibits traits from multiple psychological domains, and in many ways, Lil Durk is an archetype of a generation of men raised in trauma zones, whether that's Chicago, the favelas, the ghettos of London, the Middle East. From the outside, it's not so easy trying to understand these men, trying to break the cycle while being pulled back by the very ghosts that raised them.
Good video, man.
Alright, we back. So you see from that motherfucker, man, trauma, pain, heartbreak, money, fame, and fortune, man. It can cause some damage. You know what I'm saying? When you in these poverty-stricken places, man, and white supremacy control and manipulate people with money, and it's basically a crab in a barrel. Everybody trying to make it out. You know what I'm saying? Everybody want to be that it nigga. Everybody want to be the person on top. You know what I'm saying? And when you get that to that position, man, after so much heartbreak and pain and struggle, man, sometimes, man, the old habits die hard. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you lost people to like situations, it comes time to where, bro, you might want to get that get back. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you know, it's good to forgive people, man, because, you know, we live a life where God gonna fight for us no matter what. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes, you know, that's the best thing to do is put it in God's hands. You know what I'm saying? But I know it's a situation where, bro, the pain be so hard and the hurt and all that, and you just want to just do what you gotta do. I feel like, man, we live a life, man, where, you know, God can forgive everybody. Yahweh, you know what I'm saying? I feel like once people turn to that truth, you know what I'm saying, no matter what we done in our past, the hurt, the pain, you know what I'm saying, the bodies, it all can be forgiven. But, you know, because it's been like that in the Bible, you know. But, hey, we out here, man, hood and outside, big crip in the game and outside shit. Free that boy Durk.
Hey, Dad, you know, dog, when we link up, dog, this shit be legendary. Even though this is instrumental, you the engineer on it, so Kodak everywhere.